Did you know Elvis Presley once orchestrated a fireworks war so intense it nearly set Graceland itself ablaze? Or that guests sometimes found themselves dodging Roman candles aimed directly at them? Imagine roller skating inside the hallowed halls of the mansion, or receiving the keys to a brand new Cadillac simply for showing up to a New Year's Eve bash. These weren't just parties. They were legendary happenings spun from the whimsical, generous, and sometimes downright dangerous mind of the king himself. Get ready, because we're diving into the unbelievable reality of Graceland's most epic celebrations. Number 7. When Graceland became a private amusement park after dark. Okay, picture this. It's late, R-E-A-L-L-Y, late. The gates of Graceland are shut tight, keeping the adoring public out. But inside, the fun is just getting started. Elvis wasn't just the king of rock and roll. He was the king of turning his home into a personal playground whenever the mood struck. Forget quiet nights in. Think spontaneous, anything-goes fun fairs under the Tennessee stars, or sometimes right under the crystal chandeliers. One of the wildest things? Roller skating. Yes, you read that right. R-O-L-L-E-R-S-K-A-T-I-N-G, inside Graceland. Sources say Elvis and his buddies, the Memphis Mafia, would sometimes strap on skates and zip around the massive rooms. Can you imagine gliding, or maybe stumbling, across the floors of the trophy room, surrounded by gold records and jumpsuits? It sounds like something out of a movie, but it was just another Tuesday, or maybe Thursday night, for Elvis and his crew. The sheer absurdity of it. A mansion filled with priceless artifacts, and they're treating it like a roller rink. The potential for disaster was H-U-G-E, but that was probably part of the thrill. But it wasn't just skating. Elvis loved games. A-L-L, kinds of games. He had golf carts for zipping around the grounds, sometimes leading to impromptu races. He reportedly had a fascination with remote-controlled planes and cars, sometimes buzzing unsuspecting guests lounging by the pool. Imagine sunbathing peacefully only to have a miniature airplane dive bomb near your head piloted by the king himself chuckling from the patio. There were stories of go-kart races tearing up the driveway. Sometimes they'd set up makeshift carnival games. Anything to keep the energy high and the boredom low. Elvis had a childlike love of play, and Graceland was his giant toy box. If he got an idea for fun, no matter how unconventional, it was likely to happen. Money was no object, and the usual rules. They didn't really apply inside those gates after dark. Think about the atmosphere. It's the middle of the night. Music might be playing. Maybe from the jukebox. Maybe someone's just banging on a piano. Food is always available. Elvis famously kept the kitchen staffed 24/7. Friends are lounging, laughing, maybe slightly on edge, wondering what antic Elvis will pull next. It's exclusive, it's unpredictable, and it's fueled by the king's restless energy. These weren't formal, invitation-only events. They were spontaneous eruptions of fun, turning the stately mansion into a private wonderland where the only rule was to keep up with Elvis. It wasn't just a house, it was a backdrop for a never-ending, slightly surreal party, especially when the sun went down. Number 6. Those epic all-night movie screenings you wish you attended. Elvis, L-O-V-E-D, movies. Like really, really loved them. He wasn't just a movie star, he was a massive movie fan. And when you're Elvis Presley, you don't just go to the movies. You bring the movies to YOU. Or, even better, you rent out the entire dang theater. Many nights at Graceland weren't about loud music or wild antics, but about settling in for a marathon movie session that often lasted until the sun came up. Elvis had his own projection set up, but more famously he had a habit of renting out a local Memphis theater, the Memphian, after it closed to the public for the night. Imagine getting that call, "Hey, Elvis is renting the Memphian tonight. Wanna come?" You bet you did. Elvis, Priscilla, the Memphis Mafia, and maybe a few other lucky friends would roll up to the empty theater around midnight or 1 a.m. And the concession stand, forget about it. It was fully stocked and open all night, serving up Elvis's favorites, popcorn, hot dogs, sweets, and especially Pepsi. Whatever the king wanted, the king got. They wouldn't just watch one movie, oh no. This was Elvis. They'd watch 2, 3, sometimes even FOUR, films back to back. He had eclectic tastes. He loved comedies. Peter Sellers was a favorite, especially the Pink Panther movies. He was HUG into martial arts films, digging Bruce Lee and later the wave of karate flicks. Action movies, dramas, westerns. If it caught his interest, it was on the bill. Picture the scene, a completely empty movie theater except for Elvis and his chosen entourage. They could sprawl out talk during the boring parts, though maybe not too loudly if Elvis was engrossed, laugh as loud as they wanted, and raid the concessions at will. It was the ultimate private screening room experience. Sometimes these screenings happened right at Graceland too, while maybe not as grand as having a whole theater to themselves. The vibe was similar. Cozying up in one of the mansion's comfortable rooms, maybe the den or a dedicated media space, details vary, with films flickering on a screen until dawn. What made these nights legendary wasn't just the exclusivity or the endless snacks. It was the shared experience created by Elvis himself. He wasn't just watching. He was sharing something he loved with the people closest to him. You'd get to see his reactions, hear his comments, maybe even get drawn into a discussion about a scene afterwards. It was an intimate, relaxed way to hang out with one of the world's biggest stars. These weren't parties in the traditional sense of dancing and loud music, but they were quintessential Graceland gatherings, exclusive, indulgent, dictated by Elvis's passions, and stretching deep into the night. They offered a different kind of legendary experience, a chill, movie buff paradise hosted by the king. Who wouldn't want a ticket to that? Number 5. The legendary Christmas celebrations that lasted for weeks. Christmas at Graceland wasn't just a day, it was an entire season. Elvis absolutely adored Christmas, and he went all out. And then some. Forget subtle decorations and a quiet family dinner. Think Las Vegas spectacle meets Southern holiday charm, dialed up to 11 and lasting for weeks on end. The transformation started early, usually right after Thanksgiving. Truckloads of decorations would arrive. We're talking multiple Christmas trees throughout the mansion, including the famous large ones flanking the front door. Lights everywhere draped on the fences, wound around trees on the lawn, outlining the house itself. The famous life-sized nativity scene would be set up on the front lawn, becoming a Memphis landmark during the holidays. Inside, garlands, wreaths, poinsettias, and festive touches would adorn nearly every surface. It was a full-blown winter wonderland, Elvis style. But the decorations were just the beginning. The real legend of Graceland Christmases lies in Elvis's incredible generosity. He didn't just give gifts. He gave lavish gifts. Like life-changingly lavish. Forget socks and sweaters. Think cars, lots of cars. Cadillacs were a favored gift, but other luxury models weren't uncommon. He'd buy them for family, for friends, for members of the Memphis Mafia, sometimes even for employees or near strangers. He felt deserved something special. Imagine finding keys to a brand new caddy under the tree, or just handed to you casually. Jewelry was another big one. Rings, necklaces, watches, often custom designed and dripping with gems. Elvis loved flashy jewelry himself, and he loved sharing that sparkle with his loved ones. Cash bonuses were also common, often hefty amounts tucked into Christmas cards. He genuinely seemed to take immense pleasure in showering people with presents. The celebrations weren't confined to Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. The whole month of December often felt like one long rolling party. Friends and family would be in and out constantly. There would be big dinners with tons of food, traditional Southern holiday dishes alongside Elvis's everyday favorites, like peanut butter and banana sandwiches probably. Music was always a part of it, whether it was Christmas carols playing or Elvis sitting down at the piano for an impromptu sing-along. The atmosphere was festive, chaotic, and incredibly warm, despite the potential Tennessee chill outside. It was about family, friendship, and Elvis, playing Santa Claus on an epic scale. He created his own magical Christmas bubble, filled with twinkling lights, piles of presents, and the people he cared about. While maybe not as wild as some other Graceland events, the sheer scale, duration, and legendary generosity of Elvis's Christmas celebrations cement their place on this list. It wasn't just a holiday. It was an Elvis Presley production, designed to create maximum joy, wonder, and maybe just a little bit of happy disbelief for everyone lucky enough to be inside the gates. It was Christmas, amplified by the King. Number 4. Lisa Marie's Birthday Bashes, fit for a little princess, and her dad, the King. When your dad is Elvis Presley, your birthday parties aren't going to involve a sad clown and some pizza slices in the backyard. Oh no! Lisa Marie Presley, the King's only child, was doted on by her father, and her birthdays were reportedly events of truly royal proportions. Elvis delighted in making his little girl feel like a princess, and Graceland was the perfect castle for her celebrations. These weren't just simple kids' parties. They were elaborate affairs. Think themed decorations taking over parts of the mansion or the grounds. One famous story involves Elvis renting a private plane, a Convair 880 jet, which he later bought and christened the Lisa Marie, just to fly Lisa Marie and her friends out for a birthday adventure. While maybe not strictly at Graceland, it speaks volumes about the lengths he'd go to. Back at the mansion, the parties themselves were kid-centric, but with that unmistakable Elvis touch of extravagance. There might be ponies. Yes, actual ponies giving rides on the Graceland lawn. Imagine being a kid invited to that. There could be amusement rides brought in specially for the day, maybe a small Ferris wheel or merry-go-round. Professional entertainers, like magicians or puppeteers, might be hired to keep the little guests mesmerized. The guest list would likely include Lisa Marie's school friends, cousins, and perhaps the children of Elvis's own friends and associates. And overseeing it all, beaming with pride, would be Elvis himself. He reportedly loved being involved, watching his daughter open her presents, mingling with the kids, who were probably slightly awestruck, and just soaking in the happy chaos and the presents. You can bet they were lavish. Dolls, toys, clothes, whatever a little girl in the 70s might dream of, Lisa Marie likely received probably in abundance. Elvis wasn't known for his restraint in gift-giving, especially when it came to his daughter. He might have bought her extravagant playhouses or miniature cars. The point wasn't just the gift, but the gesture of showering his Giza, as he affectionately called her, with love and anything her heart desired. The food would be kid-friendly, but plentiful. Huge birthday cakes, mountains of ice cream, snacks galore, enough to feed a small army of children and their accompanying parents or minders. What made these parties legendary wasn't just the expense or the spectacle. It was the glimpse they offered into Elvis the Dad. Away from the stage lights and screaming fans, these parties coquetted his deep love for his daughter and his desire to give her magical childhood memories. He was using his immense resources not just for his own pleasure, but to create a fairy tale world for Lisa Marie, at least for a day. These celebrations were sweet, slightly over-the-top expressions of fatherly love, played out against the unique backdrop of Graceland. A birthday party hosted by the king for his little princess, definitely legendary. Number 3. The night Roman candles became actual weapons. Seriously. Okay, buckle up, because this is where Graceland parties went from fun and games to potentially hazardous. Elvis and his inner circle, the Memphis Mafia, loved pulling pranks and engaging in rough and tumble activities. One of their most infamous and downright dangerous pastimes: fireworks, wars. We're not talking about setting off a few pretty rockets in the backyard. We're talking about full-scale simulated combat using fireworks, particularly Roman candles and bottle rockets, as weapons aimed at each other. Yes, you read that correctly. They would divide into teams often, with Elvis leading one side, and literally shoot fireworks horizontally across the Graceland grounds. Imagine the scene. It's dark. Men are ducking behind trees and lawn furniture, not to avoid imaginary bullets, but actual flaming projectiles hissing through the air. Roman candles, which shoot multiple flaming balls, were apparently a favorite weapon. Bottle rockets would whistle past heads. There are accounts of direct hits, near misses, and clothes being singed. It sounds completely insane, and frankly, it probably was. These weren't rare occurrences either. Fireworks battles became something of a tradition, especially around holidays like the 4th of July or New Year's Eve, but sometimes just whenever the urge struck Elvis and the guys. The vast lawn of Graceland became their personal battlefield. One particularly legendary and terrifying story involves a fireworks war that got way too close to the mansion itself. Reports claim that some fireworks actually hit the house, scorching columns or potentially even breaking windows. There are tales of Elvis himself getting so caught up in the battle that he'd be directing his troops, yelling commands and firing off Roman candles like a general leading a charge. The level of danger was incredibly high. Someone could have been seriously burned or blinded. Setting the mansion or the surrounding trees on fire was a very real possibility. Accounts often mention Vernon, Elvis's father, pleading with them to stop, terrified they were going to burn the place down or kill somebody. But fueled by adrenaline and Elvis's own enthusiasm for chaos, the wars would often continue until the ammunition ran out or sheer exhaustion set in. After these pyrotechnic clashes, the Graceland groundskeepers reportedly had a major cleanup job on their hands, dealing with debris, scorch marks on the lawn, and probably shaking their heads in disbelief. What makes this so legendary? It's the sheer audacity and recklessness of it. It highlights the unique bubble Elvis lived in, where normal rules of safety and common sense often seemed suspended. It shows the lengths he and his friends would go to for a thrill, blurring the lines between fun and genuine danger. These weren't just parties, they were borderline combat, simulations fought with fire, orchestrated by the king of rock and roll on his own front lawn, utterly terrifying. Yes, unforgettable, absolutely legendary without a doubt. Number 2. New Year's Eve at Graceland. More fireworks, more Cadillacs, more E, B, E, R, Y, T, H, I, N, G. If Christmas at Graceland was a marathon of festive generosity, New Year's Eve was the explosive sprint finish. While Elvis loved Christmas, New Year's Eve seemed to tap into his penchant for grand gestures, loud noises, and celebrating with a bang, often quite literally. These weren't just parties to ring in the new year. They were legendary blowouts that combined the extravagance of Christmas with the pyrotechnic chaos of the infamous fireworks wars. New Year's Eve at Graceland was often the biggest, most anticipated party of the year. The guest list could be extensive, including family, the Memphis Mafia, friends, business associates, and sometimes fellow celebrities, if they were in town. The mansion would still be decked out in its Christmas finery, adding to the festive atmosphere. But the energy was different, more high-octane, more focused on the countdown to midnight. Food and drink flowed freely, as always. Music would be playing, laughter echoing through the rooms. But everyone knew the main event was coming at midnight. The fireworks. And these weren't just any fireworks displays. Elvis reportedly spent thousands upon thousands of dollars on fireworks for New Year's Eve. We're talking professional-grade shells exploding high above Graceland, alongside the ground-level chaos of bottle rockets and Roman candles that often characterize the fireworks wars. The stroke of midnight was the signal for absolute pyrotechnic bedlam. The sky would light up, the noise would be deafening, and the smell of gunpowder would fill the air. For the guests, it was likely both thrilling and slightly nerve-wracking, especially if they found themselves in the middle of one of the mock battles happening on the lawn. It was a spectacle of light and sound, Elvis style, which meant bigger, louder, and more dangerous than pretty much anywhere else. But the fireworks weren't the only legendary aspect of Graceland New Year's Eves. This was also prime time for Elvis's legendary generosity to kick into high gear, sometimes even surpassing his Christmas giving. The stories of Elvis spontaneously giving away cars on New Year's Eve are iconic. Imagine the scene. The party is in full swing. Elvis is feeling festive and generous, spots someone, a friend, an employee, maybe even someone he barely knows, and decides right then and there that they need a new Cadillac. He'd make a call or send one of the Memphis Mafia out and arrange for a car to be delivered sometimes right to the Graceland gates, keys handed over as a jaw-dropping New Year's surprise. He might also hand out cash or expensive jewelry. The sheer spontaneity and scale of the gifts were staggering. It wasn't planned philanthropy. It was Elvis being Elvis, caught up in the celebratory moment and sharing his immense wealth in the most dramatic way possible. These parties often went late, bleeding well into New Year's Day morning. They were a potent mix of glamour, danger, incredible generosity, and the unique energy that only Elvis could create. They solidified Graceland's reputation as a place where the unbelievable could, and often did, happen. Ringing in the new year with Elvis wasn't just attending a party. It was participating in a legend. Number 1. The any excuse for a party, when just being Elvis was reason enough. While the planned extravaganzas like Christmas and New Year's Eve were undeniably epic, perhaps the most legendary party at Graceland wasn't a single event, but the constant underlying state of readiness for spontaneous fun. It was the any excuse for a party, fueled by Elvis's restless energy, his love of surrounding himself with his entourage, and the fact that, well, he was Elvis Presley, and he could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. Graceland wasn't just a home. It was the headquarters, the clubhouse, the sanctuary for Elvis and the Memphis Mafia. There was an open-door policy, for the inner circle at least, and the place was rarely quiet or empty. Day or night, something could spark a celebration or a round of mischief. Finished a successful tour, let's party. Feeling bored on a Tuesday night, let's party. Someone learned a new song? Let's have an impromptu jam session. This constant potential for fun is what truly defined the Graceland party atmosphere. The kitchen famously operated 24/7, ready to whip up Elvis's favorite snacks, fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches, burgers, etc., at a moment's notice, ensuring no spontaneous gathering ever went hungry. The downstairs area, particularly the pool room and the legendary jungle room, were prime hangouts. The jungle room, with its green shag carpets, carved wooden furniture, and indoor waterfall, had a uniquely kitschy, relaxed vibe, perfect for informal get-togethers. Imagine Elvis holding court there, surrounded by his guys, maybe watching TV, maybe planning the next prank. Impromptu musical performances were common. Elvis had pianos and guitars readily available, and he'd often sit down and start playing and singing gospel tunes, rockabilly hits, whatever struck his fancy. Friends might join in harmonies filling the room. These weren't concerts. They were intimate, informal jam sessions, priceless moments for those lucky enough to witness them. Pool parties could happen day or night. The Graceland pool area was another hub of activity. Lounging, swimming, maybe some horseplay. It was all part of the scene. Add in Elvis's penchant for buying things on a whim, like suddenly deciding everyone needed new motorcycles and having them delivered immediately, and you have the recipe for constant unpredictable excitement. Pranks were a huge part of this everyday party vibe. Joy buzzers, whoopee cushions, water guns, the aforementioned fireworks, wars, and remote-controlled plane attacks. Elvis loved a good practical joke, and the Memphis Mafia were both his willing accomplices and frequent targets. It created an atmosphere where you always had to be slightly on your guard, but also ready to laugh. This any-excuse party wasn't about formal invitations or specific occasions. It was about the culture Elvis created at Graceland, a place insulated from the outside world, where fun, friendship, generosity, and a healthy dose of chaos reigned supreme. It was powered by the king's charisma and his desire to keep boredom at bay. Any day could turn into a memorable event. Any night could become legendary. The most legendary party at Graceland might just have been the ongoing, unpredictable, never-ending one that simply came with being in Elvis's orbit.